Welcome to today's devotional message on trusting God always. You prayed, you fasted, you waited, and still, silence. Maybe this message is the sign you didn't know you needed, a quiet confirmation in the middle of your own unanswered quiet. Before we dive deep into the heart of today's message, if these words meet you right where you are, stirring hope, offering solace, or simply reminding you that you're not walking this path alone, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. It truly helps us reach more souls who need God's comfort and the assurance that He is always at work. And I'd love to hear from you. Comment below with your favorite Bible promise, or perhaps the one you're still holding on to in the waiting. Sharing helps build this community of faith. Let's begin, and let His Word breathe new life into yours. You sit by the window now, the glass cool against your forehead. A physical anchor in a world that feels like it's spinning just beyond your grasp. Outside, the familiar rhythm of life continues. Cars pass, leaves rustle, the sun arcs across the sky. But inside you, time feels frozen. A perpetual state of waiting has settled in, thick and heavy. You've poured out your heart to God, haven't you? Laid bare the deepest longings buried in your soul, the desperate needs that keep you awake at night, the burdens that feel far too heavy for one person to carry alone. You've pleaded for answers, for a clear path forward, for a sign, any flicker of light, that He sees you, that He hears the silent cries behind your spoken words, that He is actively working in the quiet spaces where your hope is beginning to fray like an old rope. But the answer hasn't come. Not yet. Not in the way you expected or when you desperately needed it. Instead, there is only a profound, echoing silence that wraps around you like a shroud. It's a silence that can feel deafening, a void where presence should be. And in that silence, the doubts, those persistent, unwelcome guests, begin to whisper. They murmur questions like, has He forgotten me? Am I invisible to Him? Does He even care about this specific pain, this specific need? Is this wait a test, a refining fire I'm supposed to endure with stoic faith? Or is it simply nothing? A sign that perhaps my prayers were just echoes bouncing off an empty sky? Maybe you found yourself asking God these very questions, raw and vulnerable. Why does my season of waiting feel so endless, so void of your presence? Why does it feel like I'm walking through a wilderness with no compass, only a vast, empty horizon? It is a raw, vulnerable place to be, feeling unseen when you crave acknowledgement, unheard when your heart is screaming, adrift when you long for solid ground. This isn't necessarily about a fundamental lack of faith. It is often the honest, aching cry of a heart that trusts enough to question, to wrestle in the darkness of unanswered desires and delayed promises. It's like being in a storm where the wind howls, but the captain seems absent from the bridge. Yet the storm rages on. If that's where you are right now, wrestling with the weight of waiting, feeling lost in the silence, wondering if God is still there when His activity feels so hidden, this message is for you. It's for the soul that feels forgotten on the shelf of life, the heart that longs for breakthrough but sees only closed doors, the spirit that desperately needs to remember that even in the deepest quiet, you are not alone, and your story in God's hands is still being written page by silent page. Consider this. Perhaps your waiting is not empty space, but sacred ground. Maybe the silence is not absence, but the fertile soil where the deepest roots of trust take hold, unseen. Preparing for a harvest you cannot yet imagine. It's a paradox our human minds struggle with, finding fullness in emptiness, presence in silence, strength in the surrender of control. Just as a seed must die in the dark earth before it bursts forth in light, sometimes our greatest growth occurs in the hidden, quiet seasons. The truth is, God's silence is not an indicator of His inactivity. Sometimes it is the very sound of Him working in ways that are beyond our current understanding, shaping us in the quiet before revealing His finished work. He is there, crafting the masterpiece in the unseen studio of your life, even when the only sound you hear is the tapping of the wind against the glass, like His whisper waiting for your stillness. You meticulously mark the days on a calendar, counting down to a potential date, a milestone you've prayed for, a breakthrough you desperately need. Or perhaps you're just counting the weeks and months that have stretched into years, far beyond any expectation you ever held. Each sunset is a silent witness to time marching forward, while your hope feels suspended in a waiting room that seems to have no exit. You watch time unfold according to a clock that seems vastly different from your own, a relentless tick-tock that highlights the distance between your present reality and the promise held within your heart. The anxiety whispers, "Has He forgotten? Is this delay a no?" Think of Abraham and Sarah. They received a promise so grand, so specific, yet saw decades pass before its fulfillment. Imagine the birthdays that went by, the seasons that turned from spring to winter, the mundane passage of ordinary life while the extraordinary word from God remained unrealized in their arms. They too watched time unfold according to a clock that seemed impossibly slow, vastly different from the clock in their hands. Their story is a profound, aching reminder that God's timing rarely aligns with ours. His perfect plan often unfolds on a cosmic scale we cannot comprehend in the immediate moment. The years that feel like an eternity to you may be but a necessary breath in His grand narrative. The spiritual insight here is learning to release your grip on the clock in your hand, the one you frantically check, the one that fuels your impatience and doubt. It is about trusting the eternal calendar held securely in His. Psalm 94 offers a glimpse into this divine perspective. For 1,000 years in your sight are like a day that has just gone by, or like a watch in the night. To the Creator of the universe, the one who set the stars in motion and ordained the cycles of seasons, a decade is less than a blink. Your urgent deadlines, your carefully constructed timelines, they exist within a finite, human framework. His purposes are infinite, woven into the very fabric of time itself. Can you begin to quiet the frantic ticking of your own timeline? Can you gentle the anxious rhythm in your chest that demands haste? Trusting God always means trusting His timing, even when it feels counterintuitive, even when the waiting is wearying. It is a surrender of control over the clock, an offering of your anxious heart to the one who not only sees the end from the beginning, but is the beginning and the end. In releasing your urgent grip on the clock, you paradoxically gain the stillness to truly perceive is timeless, perfect work unfolding. It requires a quiet courage, a willingness to let go of your preferred schedule and trust that the Creator of time knows exactly when and how to move on yours, bringing His promise to pass in the fullness of His perfect season. He isn't bound by your clock. He holds the cosmic calendar. You feel like you're walking in circles, day after day, the landscape unchanging, the path leading back to where you started. The same obstacles rise up, the same questions echo unanswered in the quiet. It's a season of wandering, a vast, dry wilderness stretching out before you, just like the Israelites traversing the desert for 40 long years. 40 years of dust and doubt, with the promise just a whisper on the horizon, impossibly far away. This prolonged wilderness season wasn't arbitrary for them, and it isn't for you. It is a time of testing, yes, but also of profound refinement, a crucible designed not to break you, but to reveal what is truly within. Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 2 speaks this ancient truth. Remember how the Lord your God led you all the way in the wilderness, these 40 years, to humble and test you in order to know what was in your heart and whether or not you would keep His commands. The wilderness is the proving ground of the soul. Perhaps you entered this season praying for a breakthrough, but God is using the wait itself as the breakthrough. He is peeling back the layers of self-reliance, showing you the depths of your need, and teaching you absolute dependence on His daily provision. Like the manna that appeared every morning, just enough for that day. It's in the wilderness that God reveals the idols we cling to, the strategies we trust in more than Him, the ways we try to control outcomes instead of surrendering to His lead. The refining fire feels like loss, like uncertainty, like being stripped bare. But it's in this stripping that the true metal of your faith is forged. You learn to find sustenance in the Word when circumstances offer none, to see His hand in the small miracles of simply making it through another day. The very emptiness of the desert becomes a canvas for His presence. He isn't revealing your weakness to shame you, but to show you the boundless strength available in Him. The wilderness isn't where faith goes to die. It's often where it truly learns to live, raw, vulnerable, utterly reliant. What is God revealing about your heart in this season of wandering? What hidden dependencies or deep-seated fears are surfacing under the heat of the trial? Ask Him to open your spiritual eyes. Ask Him to show you the lessons woven into the very landscape of your wait, the quiet miracles disguised as monotony. He is here, providing manna for today, leading you step by patient step, shaping you in the silence. Trust the process, for the one leading you knows the way through the wilderness and into the land of promise. You sit in the silence, the echoes of harsh words or unfair actions still ringing in your ears. It feels like being thrown into a deep, dark pit, isolated, powerless, your dreams once so vibrant, now seemingly crushed and unreachable from this low place. Maybe someone you trusted deeply sold you out, not for silver, but for their own convenience or jealousy. Maybe circumstances, unfair and unjust, have locked you away in a waiting season that feels more like a prison cell. You trace the cold, damp walls of your disappointment, wondering how you got here, questioning if the promises whispered in earlier light were just illusions. Like Joseph, sold by his own brothers, abandoned in the wilderness of betrayal, then later falsely accused and imprisoned, you find yourself in a place you never envisioned, certainly not as part of the journey towards a promised destiny. The dreams you once held, the ones that shone like stars or ripened like sheaves in a field, now feel like faded memories from another life, impossibly far from the shadows where you now dwell. The injustice stings, the loss aches, and the question hangs heavy in the air. Is God even in this pit? Is he present in this prison of waiting? Yet the profound, quiet truth that anchors the soul in such moments is this: God's sovereign plan operates relentlessly, faithfully, even in the very eye of human sin and the storm of suffering it creates. He was with Joseph in the pit. He was with him in Potiphar's house. He was with him in the prison. God was weaving. He wasn't endorsing the evil acts, but he was certainly present within them, charting a course that the perpetrators could never have foreseen. Genesis 50 verse 20 stands as a lighthouse over these troubled waters. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. What others designed for your destruction, God is capable of redesigning for your redemption and the good of many. He takes the broken shards of betrayal and the heavy chains of injustice and begins to forge them into something beautiful, something purposeful. His hand is guiding, even when you can only see shadows. His plan is unfolding, even when the path feels utterly lost. The pit you are in is not beyond the reach of his light, nor is the prison door too thick for his grace to penetrate. Can you trust that he is weaving his redemptive purposes through the unfairness and setbacks you face during this long, hard waiting period? It requires a different kind of sight, not seeing the end, but seeing the author's hand on the thread, knowing he can turn moments of despair into stories of divine intervention. It is in the deepest valleys that his presence often becomes the most tangible, like a lamp illuminating the path unseen. Look closely in the quiet moments for the subtle ways his hand is still guiding you, still providing, still preparing you for a future you cannot yet grasp from the confines of your current reality. He waits with you, works through you, and waits for you on the other side of this season. Surrendering control in the pit becomes the unexpected path to freedom in his purpose. You sit in the silence, wondering if your prayer was even heard. The wind taps the window, like God's whisper waiting for your stillness. You feel buried, don't you? Like a seed dropped into the dark, damp earth. Isolated, under incredible pressure from the soil above, the unseen forces around you. There's no sprout pushing through, no visible sign that anything is happening, just the heavy weight of waiting and the fear that maybe this darkness is just darkness, that this quiet is just emptiness. You look around at others, seemingly blooming, reaching for the sun, and the contrast sharpens the ache of your own hiddenness. You might be asking, is anything changing? Am I stuck here forever? It's easy to lose hope when the evidence of growth is hidden. But beneath the surface, where the eye cannot see, a miraculous work is happening. It is in this unseen, often uncomfortable space that the most critical development occurs. Your roots are developing. They are pushing out into the darkness, searching, anchoring you firmly in the rich soil of God's faithfulness. They are drawing in nourishment you cannot yet perceive, building a foundation strong enough to support the life and fruitfulness God intends for you. This quiet season, this pressure, this feeling of being buried is not stagnation. It is preparation. It is God cultivating resilience, shaping character, weaving a tapestry of deep spiritual roots that will sustain you when the storms inevitably come. Jeremiah 17:7-8 paints this picture beautifully. The one who trusts in the Lord is like a tree planted by the water, sending out its roots by the stream. It does not fear when heat comes. Its leaves are always green. It has no worries in a year of drought and never fails to bear fruit. The strength isn't in the leaves you see today, but in the roots you can't. Trust this hidden process. Even when you see no progress on the surface, God is building something strong and deep within you, preparing you for a harvest you haven't even imagined. Your waiting season is not wasted. It is the sacred ground where roots grow in the darkness, preparing you for the light. You try to pray, but the words feel thin, like they're just hitting the ceiling, dissipating into the silence of a room that feels too large, too empty. You open your Bible, seeking solace, seeking a lifeline, but the promises feel distant, meant for someone else, somewhere else, in a time that isn't yours. Your faith, which once felt robust, a solid anchor in the storm, now seems fragile, a thin thread, frayed and battered by the relentless waves of waiting. The season stretches on, a landscape of unmet expectation, and with each passing day, the ground beneath you seems to shift, to crumble just a little more. It is a difficult truth to hold, but an essential one. Waiting will test your faith. It is designed to expose the places where our trust is in the timeline, not the author of time. It feels like abandonment, like a cruel cosmic game of delay. But the spiritual insight here offers a different lens. God isn't disappointed by your struggle. He is intimately aware of it. He isn't frustrated by your questions or the trembling in your voice. He uses this very friction to refine you. Think of it not as punishment, but as a divine process of purification. 1 Peter 1:6-7 whispers into this space, a quiet assurance that trials come so that the proved genuineness of your faith, of greater worth than gold, which perishes even though refined by fire, may result in praise, glory, and honor when Jesus Christ is revealed. Your faith, in this very moment of fragility, is being forged in the furnace of waiting. It feels small, perhaps smaller than you ever imagined possible. You look at the faith you possess, and it seems less than a grain of sand on an infinite shore. But remember the mustard seed. Jesus spoke of a faith so tiny, yet capable of moving mountains. It is okay if your faith feels small. God can work with even the smallest seed, nurturing it in the hidden, heat-filled darkness of this season. He isn't asking for a triumphant declaration of strength you don't feel. He is asking for a simple turn of your heart towards Him. Can you lean just a little? Just a breath into the wind that feels like opposition, knowing it's carrying you closer. He is not only witnessing your struggle, He is actively, though perhaps invisibly, sustaining your faith through the fire, preparing it for a weight of glory you cannot yet perceive. The waiting is not an empty space. It is holy ground where God is doing His deepest, most precious work. The list is etched into the quiet chambers of your heart. Prayers offered in whispers and shouts, bathed in tears that tracked pathways down your cheeks. Needs presented with the raw urgency of a moment, specific outcomes pleaded for, like milestones marked on a desperate map. Some have lived on that list for months, even years, gathering dust and the heavy silence of time. They feel unheard, unanswered, as if God's celestial mailbox is full, or his ears are simply turned away. The weight settles, a stone in your chest, crushing the fragile flower of hope. Confusion clouds your vision. Doubt, a serpent in the garden of your faith, whispers insidious questions. Does he care? Can he truly act? Is he even there? But lean closer, past the clamor of anxious thoughts. What if an unanswered prayer isn't a denied decree? What if silence isn't absence, but merely the sound of God working in wavelengths you cannot yet perceive? Sometimes the answer isn't no, it's simply not yet. Like a farmer tending a seed, God knows the season for harvest. Sometimes the answer isn't what you asked for, but I have something better, a divine blueprint unfolding beyond your limited sight. Perhaps the greatest answers are not seen, but felt. A peace settling like dew on parched ground, a quiet strength rising like a river where there was only wilderness. You asked for a way out, but he gave you endurance through the valley. You pleaded for clarity, but he offered his presence in the fog. Jesus tells a story, a small seed of truth, blooming into a parable in Luke 18. The persistent widow bothers an unjust judge, wearing him down not by his goodness, but by her relentless knocking. Why? To show us that we should keep praying, always, without giving up. It's not because God is like the unjust judge, reluctant and needing to be pestered into action. No, he is our loving Father. The persistence is for us. Each prayer offered is a defiant stand against despair, a declaration of dependence. It strengthens your faith muscles. Building resilience, like roots pushing deeper into the soil during a storm. It reminds you where your help truly comes from. Continue to bring your list before him. Unfold your heart with honesty. Lay bare the fear and the fatigue. Pray not because you need to convince God, but because you need to remember who he is. The one who hears the sparrow fall, who numbers the hairs on your head. Pray with persistence, not demanding, but trusting. He is working, often in unseen ways, weaving your story into his. Keep knocking. He is listening. You pushed every door you could find, even the ones clearly marked closed. You twisted the handle, rattled the frame, leaned your shoulder into the wood, determined to force it open by sheer will. You meticulously planned timelines, drafting Gantt charts for God, convinced you could help nudge his cosmic clock forward. You manipulated circumstances with the skill of a seasoned strategist, believing that if you just aligned the right people, said the right words, or engineered the perfect scenario, you could finally bring about the outcome you craved. It felt like strength, like determination, like necessary action. It felt like controlling the wild, unpredictable storm of your life with human hands. But the doors remained stubbornly shut. The timelines blurred and evaporated. The circumstances twisted in ways you couldn't foresee or control, scattering your careful plans like dust in the wind. You felt the gnawing anxiety in your gut, the sleepless nights replaying conversations, the constant tension in your shoulders from holding everything together. You were trying to bail out a sinking ship with a teacup, exhausting yourself in a futile battle against forces far greater than your own. The fear of loss tightened its grip. Fear of losing the opportunity, losing face, losing hope itself. Doubt whispered insidious lies. Maybe you weren't meant for this. Maybe you weren't worthy. Maybe God wasn't listening after all. You hit the end of yourself, the absolute limit of your own strength and ingenuity. The pushing stopped. The forcing ceased. The frantic manipulation collapsed. In that moment of utter depletion, you didn't find failure. You found the edge of surrender. You didn't fall into despair. You fell to your knees. The carefully constructed walls of self-reliance crumbled, revealing the raw, vulnerable heart beneath. This is the transformative moment. It's not giving up on hope, but giving up control. It's the paradoxical peace found not in winning the battle, but in laying down your arms. You breathe out the tension you've held captive for so long, and in the sudden space, a different kind of air enters your lungs, lighter, freer. It's the air of letting go. The spiritual insight dawns, not like a harsh spotlight, but like the quiet glow of dawn after a long, dark night. True peace in the waiting season doesn't arrive when you finally control the outcome or successfully speed up God's process. It arrives when you stop trying to do either. It arrives when you surrender your will, your timing, your frantic efforts to God's sovereign hand. Think of the mustard seed, the smallest seed, seemingly insignificant, yet holding the potential for the largest plant. Your small, seemingly weak act of surrender holds immeasurable power, not because you are powerful, but because of the power you are surrendering to. It feels like falling, but it's actually ascending into trust. When we pray, as Jesus taught us in the Sermon on the Mount, "Your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven," we are doing more than reciting words. Matthew 6:10. We are aligning ourselves with an infinite power and wisdom that sees the full tapestry, not just the tangled threads you are desperately trying to straighten. We are releasing our small, limited perspective to the one whose thoughts are higher than our thoughts, and whose ways are higher than our ways. Isaiah 55:9. It is in this release that rest is found, not in the resolution of your circumstance, but in the profound peace of knowing God is in control, not you. He is the author of your story, and even in the chapters you can't read ahead, He is writing with purpose and love. Look honestly at the areas of your current waiting season where you are still desperately trying to control the narrative. Is it a relationship, a career decision, a health outcome, a financial struggle? Can you name those areas one by one and offer them like quiet sacrifices into God's keeping today? It won't feel natural at first. It might feel like walking naked into the wilderness. But remember, the wilderness was where Jesus was prepared. This act of surrender is not weakness. It is the most profound expression of faith. It is choosing to trust that God's yes is perfect, His no is protective, and His wait is purposeful. Find rest today, not in having all the answers, but in the quiet, unwavering peace of trusting His sovereign hand to lead you, hold you, and guide you through the waiting right into the fullness of His perfect plan. This surrender isn't the end. It is the true beginning of walking in His peace. You feel the edges of your current reality chafing, a quiet discomfort settling in your bones. The long season of waiting stretches before you like a desolate highway, mile after mile of uncertainty. Maybe it's the career path that hasn't opened, the relationship that lingers in limbo, or the health outcome that hangs heavy in the air. You check the news, you check the phone, you check the horizon, searching for the sign, the shift, the arrival that will finally allow your life to begin again, or perhaps truly begin at all. In this pause, this prolonged breath held tight in your chest, it's dangerously easy to let your identity become tangled up with the very thing you're waiting for. You feel like you're on hold, a temporary file in the cosmic waiting room, your sense of self tethered precariously to an outcome that is not yet in your hands. Am I valuable if this doesn't work out? What is my purpose while I'm here, stuck, if the external validation or the desired circumstance isn't present? Does that diminish who I am? You feel incomplete, fragmented, perhaps even questioning your worth in the quiet hours of the night, convinced that your full self, your real self, is contingent upon the waiting finally ending. It's a wilderness of the soul, where the landmarks you used to rely on, achievement, status, connection, seem to have vanished. Yet this wilderness, this uncomfortable space of waiting, holds a profound, often painful, spiritual truth. It is precisely here that God begins to strip away the external layers you've perhaps unknowingly built your identity upon. The titles are gone. The roles are paused. The comfortable circumstances are missing, and you are left with you. And in that raw, exposed space, God gently, persistently points you back to your foundational, unshakable identity in Christ. It's a powerful paradox. You feel diminished by the weight, but the weight is designed to show you your immeasurable value in Him. Long before the concept of your waiting even existed, before the world itself was spoken into being. Ephesians 1:4-5 declares a staggering truth. You were chosen by Him, not for what you would achieve or who you would become in a certain circumstance, but because of His love and sovereign will. Predestined for adoption, called His beloved child, before you ever took a breath. Your value, your purpose, your inherent belovedness are not temporary loans contingent on your circumstances changing, on prayers being answered exactly as you wish, or on external validations arriving. They are settled realities, sealed by grace. The waiting doesn't determine who you are. It reveals who you already are in His eyes. This season, as uncomfortable as it may be, is an invitation to lean into that truth. Who is God revealing you to be in this quiet, often frustrating meantime? Look past the waiting thing. Look into His gaze. What does He say about the person sitting right here, right now, in this space of unknown? He doesn't see an incomplete project. He sees a chosen child. He doesn't see someone on hold. He sees someone being refined. He doesn't see someone lacking. He sees someone filled with His Spirit. The discomfort of the wait is a crucible, not a condemnation. It burns away the identity built on shifting sands, leaving behind the bedrock of who you are in Him. Find your stability not in the outcome, but in the author. Trust that the one who called you His own before time began is intimately aware of you now, in every moment of this uncertain wait. Let His truth anchor you, defining you more deeply than any circumstance ever could. This wait is not the end of your story. It is the chapter where you truly discover the hero He always knew you were. You've been waiting for the sky to split, for the thunderous sign, for the undeniable breakthrough that announces God has heard you, that He sees your struggle. In the deafening silence of unmet expectation, it's easy to believe the lie that He is distant, maybe even uninterested, certainly absent from the slow ache of your everyday. You replay the prayers, search the horizon for the dramatic intervention, and the quiet days blur into a landscape of spiritual emptiness. The world screams for grand gestures, for the loud pronouncements of success or deliverance, and your soul, echoing that demand, strains to see God move in similarly spectacular ways. But the spectacular doesn't arrive. Only the quiet persists. Yet even in this quiet, even when the breakthrough seems a distant mirage, God is present, not in the thunder, but in the whisper, just beyond your anxious hearing. Not in the sky-splitting sign, but in the gentle tap at your window, like His patience, waiting for yours. Lamentations 3:22-24 whispers a profound truth into the heart of affliction. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. This isn't a promise for when the mountains move, but for when you sit amidst the ruins, when hope feels threadbare. His faithfulness isn't proven only in the miraculous, but in the steady, the new every morning. It's a faithfulness that doesn't demand the spotlight, but operates in the shadows, a quiet humming beneath the surface noise of your life. Look closer. When you felt you couldn't take another step, did a flicker of unexpected strength simply appear? When despair threatened to consume you, did an unforeseen moment of comfort land softly, like a dove on your shoulder? Was there a timely word from a friend, a scripture that seemed to jump off the page, a small, perfect provision that arrived precisely when the well felt dry? These aren't random occurrences. These are the quiet signatures of a God who is intimately involved, meticulously weaving His presence into the fabric of your waiting. He isn't just planning the grand finale, He is sustaining you within the story. His greatest works are often done in the hidden places, in the soil where the mustard seed grows unseen before it becomes a tree. It is a gentle paradox. His presence is loudest, not in the shout you long for, but in the stillness you struggle to embrace. His power is most evident, not in the force that breaks chains, but in the quiet grace that helps you bear them for a season. Trust the quiet humming. Trust the mercies that are new, not weekly or monthly, but every morning. Where can you see the quiet signs of His enduring grace and care for you today? Look closely. He is there. The waiting room of the soul can feel like a solitary confinement, didn't it? The air is thick with unspoken fears, the ones you barely admit to yourself, and the minutes stretch into hours, days, weeks, even years. You carry a specific weight, a quiet ache deep within you, a burden so personal you feel no one truly understands its intricate shape or the specific way it presses down on your spirit. Is it the unrelenting financial pressure, the soul-deep longing for a child that goes unanswered month after month, the agonizing pain of a broken relationship that won't heal, the frightening uncertainty of a health diagnosis, the prayer for a loved one that seems lost in the ether, the career door that remains stubbornly shut. You sit with this, day after day, feeling the sheer, crushing loneliness of the journey. Every smile you offer feels like a carefully constructed mask, hiding the tremor beneath. Inside, the pressure builds until it feels like you might shatter. You try to pray, pouring out your heart again and again, but the words feel hollow, bouncing back in the cold echo chamber of your own distress. Was the promise you thought you heard just your own desperate wishful thinking? The wilderness feels vast and desolate when you believe you traverse it utterly alone. The oil in your lamp flickers, threatening to extinguish completely, and you wonder if anyone even sees you fumbling in the dark. But hear this truth, whispered like a gentle breeze stirring hope over the barren landscape of your isolation. You were never meant to walk this path alone. God, in His infinite wisdom and boundless grace, didn't design us for solitary endurance in the storm or lonely journeys through the valley. He designed us for community, for shared strength, for interconnected faith, like branches drawing life from the same vine. The ancient wisdom holds firm, a cornerstone for our weary souls. Carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ. Galatians chapter 6, verse 2. This isn't just compassionate advice, it's a divine mandate, a pathway to fulfilling the very heart of God's command for us. Love lived out in tangible support. Here lies a quiet, profound paradox. In the act of giving away your burden, allowing another to share its weight, you discover it becomes inexplicably lighter. In sharing your struggle, laying bare your fears, you discover a strength you didn't know existed, drawn from a source outside yourself. When the waiting feels overwhelming, when the weight feels unbearable in this season, turn outwards as well as upwards. Reach out. Seek that trusted Christian friend, your small group, a wise mentor. Let them see the authentic you, the one behind the mask. Let them listen, truly listen, without platitudes or judgment, to the raw ache in your heart. Let them pray for you, lifting your heavy heart before the throne of grace, alongside their own petitions. Their simple presence, their steadfast faith, their faithful prayers, these can be like the steady lamp in the dark valley, a beacon reminding you that dawn will break, that God has not forgotten you. Sometimes the most powerful reminder of God's faithfulness in your waiting season is witnessing His faithfulness unfolding in someone else's story. Hearing how God faithfully brought them through their own wilderness, how He answered their seemingly silent prayer in His perfect timing, how He redeemed their loss. This can reignite the dying embers of hope in your own soul. Their testimony becomes a luminous signpost on your road, whispering, He did it for them. He is still the same God. He can and will do it for you. God's provision isn't always a thunderclap from heaven. Often, it is His grace channeled through the loving hands, empathetic hearts, and persistent prayers of the brothers and sisters He has placed around you. Trusting God always includes trusting the community He provides as His instruments of hope. You feel the storm swirling. The wind of uncertainty howls around your heart, and the waves of doubt crash against the vessel of your soul. You've been waiting, praying, pleading, but the horizon remains shrouded in mist, the desired outcome nowhere in sight. It's in these seasons, when the wait feels impossibly long and uncertain, that your soul can feel utterly adrift, tossed about like a small boat in a violent sea. Fear becomes your companion, whispering anxieties with every gust of wind. Doubt becomes the current, pulling you further from the shore of peace. Is there anything or anyone strong enough to hold you steady when everything feels unstable? The ancient whispers of Scripture offer not a mere wish, but a powerful declaration, biblical hope. This is not the fragile, "I hope it works out" sentiment of human optimism. No, this hope is different. It is described as a solid, unbreakable anchor for the soul. Imagine that, an anchor, heavy and firm, dropped deep into the seabed, holding you secure, regardless of the fury on the surface. Hebrews 6:19-20 names this hope explicitly. We have this hope as an anchor for the soul, firm and secure. It enters the inner sanctuary behind the curtain, where our forerunner, Jesus, has entered on our behalf. This hope is not anchored in the storm or even in the desired outcome, but in the very presence of God, in the most secure place imaginable. This spiritual insight transforms the nature of your weight. It doesn't promise the storm will cease immediately, nor that the waves of fear won't lap at the sides of your boat. The anchor doesn't eliminate the struggle. It provides stability within the struggle. It keeps you from being completely overwhelmed, from capsizing under the pressure. The firmness of this anchor is rooted in something entirely trustworthy: God's unchanging character and His guaranteed promises. His faithfulness isn't conditional on your circumstances or the speed of your answers. His promises are yes and amen, anchored not in your ability to believe perfectly, but in His perfect nature. Perhaps today you need to pause and ask yourself, where is my hope truly anchored right now? Is it in the outcome I'm desperately praying for? The healed relationship? The new job? The answered prayer? Or is it anchored in the one who holds the outcome in His hands? Is it in the perceived strength of your own boat? Or in the immovable bedrock of God's faithfulness beneath the churning surface? The divine invitation in this season of waiting is to shift your gaze, to deliberately re-anchor your soul. Hold fast to the hope set before you, Jesus Himself, who has gone ahead and secured your place in God's presence. He is faithful who promised. Even when you can't see the shore, you can trust the anchor holds. You look at the calendar again. Another week gone. Another milestone missed. That familiar knot tightens in your stomach, the one woven from anxiety and the raw, restless energy of waiting. It's easy to talk about patience when the finish line is in sight, when progress is a steady climb up a visible mountain. But here, in this valley of delay, where the path seems to disappear into the mist, patience feels less like a virtue and more like an impossible command. You notice the small things, the irritation at a slow line, the quick flash of frustration when a plan hits a snag. Perhaps the larger weight is teaching you something subtle, shifting your internal landscape in ways you don't yet fully grasp. This season of holding still, this wilderness where nothing seems to be moving forward, feels less like progress and more like being forgotten. You stand at the edge of your hope, wondering how long you can simply endure. But the ancient whispers tell a different story. Patience, in the language of the Spirit, is not merely gritting your teeth through hardship. It is a divine quality, a quiet strength that flows from yielding to the hand that holds the timing of all things. The wait is not empty space. It is the classroom. It is the field where the seed of patience is sown, watered by tears, and warmed by the slow, steady sun of God's faithfulness. It is a fruit listed among the harvest of the Spirit in Galatians 5:22-23. Love, joy, peace, patience. This isn't something you conjure up through sheer willpower. It is cultivated in you by the Holy Spirit as you surrender your frantic timeline for His perfect one. He is not refining your circumstances as much as He is refining you. The fire of delay is not meant to consume you, but to burn away the dross of hurried expectation, leaving behind the pure gold of steadfastness. See this waiting not as a punishment, but as a master sculptor's work, chipping away at impatience, forging forbearance. Pray specifically. Ask the Holy Spirit to breathe His divine patience into your soul during this season. The wait is the pruning, and the patience that blooms is His beautiful, quiet strength taking root deep within your spirit. Sometimes, the fastest way forward is to stand completely still in faith. You sit with the residue of a long season of waiting. The calendar pages turned, seasons shifted outside your window, but the situation you prayed so fervently over remains stubbornly unchanged. A heavy quiet settled in, punctuated only by the echo of unanswered requests. You felt stuck, perhaps forgotten, wondering if the promises whispered in the stillness of your heart would ever find their tangible expression in your life. The waiting felt like a wilderness, dry and endless, a place where hope could easily wither under the relentless sun of disappointment. And then, sometimes suddenly, sometimes subtly, the shift begins. A door that was locked for years creaks open. A seemingly insurmountable obstacle dissolves, not through your striving, but through a convergence of circumstances you couldn't have orchestrated. A phone call comes, an email arrives, a conversation unlocks a path previously hidden. This is the breakthrough you yearned for, a visible answer manifesting in the external world, a tangible testament to God's attentive ear and active hand. It feels like rain finally falling on parched ground, a river appearing in the wasteland you thought you'd be forever wandering. But often, the breakthrough is less dramatic, more profound. It's not the mountain moving, but you gaining the strength to climb it, or perhaps discovering the mountain wasn't the destination after all. The new thing isn't the external change you envisioned, but an internal landscape completely transformed. It's the unexpected release from gnawing anxiety that felt like a constant companion. It's a sudden, clear perspective that reframes everything, showing you God was working in the waiting, shaping your character, and redirecting your steps onto a path you hadn't even considered, but which now resonates with deep peace and purpose. The struggle wasn't wasted. It was the very soil in which the breakthrough could take root. The perceived silence wasn't absence. It was the quiet work of preparation. The spiritual insight is tender and true. Breakthroughs arrive in God's way and on His divine timeline. They are rarely a response to your impatience, but often a beautiful culmination following the very season of difficulty that felt so unbearable. Consider the ancient whisper in Isaiah 43 verse 19. See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? I am making a way in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland. God is always doing a new thing. It's not dormant. It's springing up now. The question isn't whether he's working, but whether you are prepared to perceive it. The wilderness wasn't the end. It was the place he chose to make a way. The wasteland wasn't barrenness forever. It was where streams would flow. Your waiting has refined your vision, quieted your soul, and prepared the ground of your heart to perceive and step into his new thing. Even if it looks vastly different from the breakthrough you meticulously imagined. Be watchful, for he is faithful to bring his dawn after your long night. You sit in the long wait, a quiet ache settling deep in your chest. The path ahead is obscured. The purpose of this stillness, a frustrating mystery. You prayed for movement, for clarity, for a sign, but only the ticking clock answers, marking time you feel is slipping away. It feels like God is silent, like your earnest petitions vanished into the ether, unanswered. The frustration is a heavy cloak, wrapping around you, whispering doubts about his plan, his care, his very presence in this barren season. You look around, and others seem to be moving, growing, understanding, while you feel rooted to the spot, a tree in winter, stripped bare, waiting for a spring that feels impossibly far away. But the truth of God's heart is often revealed in the quiet, often painful unfolding, not in the immediate clarity we crave. The divine wisdom behind the delay, the unexpected redirection, or this long stretch of silence is rarely apparent in the thick of it. It's like trying to understand a vast landscape while standing at the foot of a single hill. You only grasp the grand design when you reach a higher vantage point, looking back across the terrain you've traversed. Only from that new perspective do the seemingly random detours connect. The stagnant periods reveal their hidden growth, and the wisdom of God's perfect timing begins to dawn. This period isn't a cosmic pause button pressed by a forgetful deity. It is an integral part of his purposeful, intricate plan, meticulously woven into the fabric of your life story. The spiritual insight that anchors a searching soul is this: God's delays are not denials of his immense love or limitless power. They are deliberate orchestrations within a plan far grander and more beautiful than your current limited vision can comprehend. They are the turning of the potter's wheel, the careful refining in the fire, the crucial time for roots to deepen in the unseen soil before the visible bloom. Romans 8:28 stands as a steadfast promise in the storm of confusion, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. This isn't a platitude. It's a divine guarantee that even this weight, even this lack of understanding, is being worked for your ultimate good and fitted into his eternal purpose for you. Perhaps the greatest act of faith in this moment is not demanding to see the map, but trusting the guide. Trust that even if the reason for your wilderness season isn't clear today, even if the silence feels deafening, God is weaving a tapestry far more beautiful and purposeful than you can currently see. He is building strength you didn't know you needed, cultivating patience you never thought you had, and preparing you for a future that will make perfect sense of this present mystery. The understanding will come, perhaps not in the way you expect, not with flashing lights or booming voices, but in his perfect timing, revealing the profound wisdom hidden within the waiting. Let this quiet truth settle upon you. You are not forgotten. You are being formed. The silence stretches. Each second feels like an eternity when you're holding your breath, waiting for an answer, a breakthrough, a sign. You look at the calendar, counting days that have blurred into weeks, months, maybe even years. The path you thought was clear suddenly disappeared into mist, or worse, led you exactly where you didn't want to go. You prayed with fervor, believed with all your might, planted that mustard seed of hope deep in the soil of your heart. But the sprout hasn't appeared. Or maybe the sprout came, but it wasn't the plant you expected. The outcome, when it finally arrived, felt less like a divine delivery and more like a cosmic shrug. A closed door where you saw an open one. A quiet no when your soul cried yes. This is the crucible of faith, isn't it? The place where trusting God moves beyond receiving blessings or seeing immediate answers. It's where faith is refined, stretched to its deepest expression. Trusting God's heart, even when you don't understand His hand. You see the hand. Perhaps it's the hand that held back, that redirected, that allowed pain or prolonged waiting. It doesn't make sense from your limited vantage point. Why this delay? Why this detour? Why this outcome that feels so profoundly wrong? Your mind races, trying to reconcile your understanding of a loving God with the reality you're experiencing. The fear creeps in, cold and sharp. Did I misunderstand? Was my faith too small? Is God not good to me in this moment? This is where the truly transformative spiritual insight arrives, quiet but powerful, like a deep river flowing beneath a dry riverbed. Your trust is not ultimately in what God does for you, or when He does it, or how He aligns your circumstances to your immediate desires. No, your trust is ultimately in who God is. It's anchored in His unchanging character, His unfailing love, His perfect goodness, His infinite wisdom that sees beyond the horizon you face. It's about resting in the profound, freeing truth that He is good. The ancient psalmist knew this truth, etching it into the very fabric of God's word. You are good, and what you do is good. Psalm 119:68. This isn't a conditional statement. It doesn't say you are good when things are easy, or what you do is good only when I understand it or like the outcome. No, the declaration stands alone, absolute. You are good, and what you do is good. This truth remains constant, a bedrock in the storm, regardless of the churning waves around you, regardless of the prolonged wilderness trek, regardless of the dreams that seem deferred or even denied. Can you lean into that assurance? Can you breathe into the reality that because He is inherently, immutably good, everything He allows, everything He ordains, everything He orchestrates in your life, yes, even the painful waiting, even the unexpected turn, even the outcome that brings tears instead of triumph, flows from His goodness towards you. This isn't spiritual bypassing. It doesn't diminish the ache in your soul, the legitimate grief over what is lost or not yet gained. The pain is real, sharp, and valid, but the anchor, the fundamental reality, is His goodness. Trusting His heart in these moments is perhaps the highest form of worship, a surrender that says, even when I cannot trace your hand, I will trust your heart. It's like the traveler lost in dense fog, unable to see the path or the destination, yet holding tight to the hand of a guide who knows the way perfectly. The fear of the unknown is real. The anxiety about stumbling is palpable, but the trust in the guide's character, their wisdom, their commitment to getting you through, becomes the only light. This trust allows for a different kind of peace to settle within you. Not the peace that comes from having all the answers or seeing the clear path ahead. No, it's the peace that arrives quietly in the midst of confusion. The peace that sustains you while the waiting persists. The peace that allows you to walk forward, even when the path is dramatically different from the one you envisioned. It's the radical acceptance that His plan, born of His perfect goodness, is ultimately better and richer than your own, even if you can't see the why from here. It's finding freedom in the mystery, discovering strength in the stillness, and seeing divine wisdom woven into the very fabric of delay. Trusting His heart means believing that even in the shadowed valleys, He is still leading you towards sunlit peaks. Perhaps peaks you couldn't have reached on the path you thought you needed. It is resting your weary soul in the truth that because He is good, everything He does or doesn't do is ultimately good for you, even if it feels like pruning before bearing fruit, or like winter before spring. As you reach the end of this reflection on waiting, you feel a sense of quiet peace settling over you, a softening of the tension that held you captive for so long. The waiting might still be present, the desired outcome not yet in view, the external landscape stubbornly unchanged, but something fundamental has shifted within your soul. It's as if the fighting has ceased, replaced by a deep, resonant exhale. You have walked through the valley of doubt, wrestled with the silence that felt like abandonment, and emerged remembering the unwavering truth of God's faithfulness. You see it now, woven throughout the grand tapestry of history and intricately stitched within the unfolding narrative of your own life. The prophets waited, the disciples waited, the early church waited, and through every season of apparent stillness, God was relentlessly at work. The spiritual journey through waiting isn't about arriving at a place where you never have to wait again, where all answers are immediate and all paths clear. No, it is about learning to live fully, faithfully, and peacefully within the sacred rhythms of God's grace and His perfect timing. It's acknowledging that His clock runs differently, not out of delay, but out of divine precision. It's knowing deep in your bones that even in the profound stillness, His presence is a gentle current flowing beneath the surface of your life, unseen but undeniably real. He is there, guiding you with an invisible hand, sustaining you with a quiet strength, preparing you for what is to come in ways you cannot yet fathom. Remember the seed hidden in the earth, buried and unseen, where its most vital work happens in the darkness, growing roots strong enough to support the future harvest. Remember the wilderness lessons etched into the souls of those who journeyed before you, seasons stripped bare, where dependence on God became the only lifeline, forging resilience and intimacy. Every moment of your waiting has been purposeful. Every tear shed in the silence, every whispered prayer in the night, every step taken forward, despite the lack of visible progress. It has all been part of His perfect design. You are not forgotten. The God who counts the stars and knows them by name certainly knows your name, your heart, your every fear, and your deepest longing. You are deeply loved, not because of your patience or your perfect faith, but simply because you are His. You are intricately known, every facet of your being understood by the one who knitted you together. And you are held securely, not precariously balanced on the edge of uncertainty, but cradled in the hands of the one who holds time itself, who orchestrates the dance of the cosmos with effortless grace. The silence you've experienced is not void. It is not an absence of God. It is often filled with the sound of His quiet work, the gentle rhythm of His grace, perfecting your faith, refining your character, and drawing you closer to His heart than you ever thought possible. This hidden season is not a pause in your story. It is the essential, foundational chapter where the most profound growth occurs. You can breathe now. You can rest in the knowledge, settled deep within your spirit, that the God who began a good work in you is utterly faithful to complete it, not according to your hurried timeline, but in His time and in His way. Even in the continued silence, His presence sings over you, a lullaby of love and promise, reminding you that you are forever His, forever held, forever guided, step by faithful step. Trust the waiting. Trust Him, the author, who is turning your hidden season into a holy story. They didn't see the end, but they trusted the author, and that was enough.